Story time! Warning. Contains adult content including harsh language, violence, and sexual themes, and may not be suitable for people under age 17.
Devil's Angel. Read to you and written by Kara Reynolds. High up above and through towering golden gates stood an immense structure so tall you couldn't see the top. It was made of pure chrome and stretched further than the eye could see. Outside, the angels of heaven enjoyed their peaceful afterlife, going to their jobs, attending their schools, and most of all, admiring the vast building. The giant double doors bore an enormous cross, which split when the doors were opened. Standing on either side of the door were guards with golden wings, much unlike the common white. There were many of these golden-winged guards stationed outside of the building, for it was the home of God. A boy who appeared to be 17 sat on a decorative and comfortable couch, watching his little twin sisters play with their dolls. He was very slim, and his wavy hair, the color of pale gold, fell over his face into his striking sapphire eyes. His skin was as fair as ivory, and seemed to glow with warmth. He wore a silver cross necklace and tiny golden studs in both ears. Suddenly, his round boyish face split into an attractive grin as he watched one of his sisters make her doll dance. The girls both appeared to be the age of 8, with the same wavy golden hair falling past their backs, and innocent blue eyes shining with happiness as they put on a concert for their dolls. They both wore identical frilly white dresses that flowed to their ankles, showing their tiny bare feet. One of them looked over to the boy.
"Nathaniel, come play dolls with us,"
she chirped. "No, no, Ariel," replied Nathaniel with a sweet smile. "Dolls aren't really my thing."
"But Esther needs a bodyguard for her pop star," Ariel argued.
"It's okay," said Esther.
"We can play the bodyguard ourselves."
Nathaniel sighed. Just then he heard his name being called from the other room. He stood up and walked along the velvet-carpeted hallway down to his father's office. Outside a large door stood 2 women, each with silver wings, his father's secretaries and protectors. They allowed him to pass, and Nathaniel stepped into the gigantic room, looking into the face of God. "You wanted to see me, Father?" he asked with a smile.
"Yes, son,"
said God, sitting behind a golden desk littered with papers.
"Sit, please."
Nathaniel sat in a chair in front of the desk, looking puzzled. God took a moment to speak, but when he finally did, his voice wavered slightly.
"I'm afraid we might be headed towards a war."
"What do you mean?" asked Nathaniel quickly. He may have only looked 17, but he had been born nearly 300 years ago. He'd witnessed wars among humans, so he thought maybe another one was going to break out. If that were so, however, his father wouldn't have sounded so grave.
"I fear that the mortal world may be in very great danger,"
said God.
"I've been watching the signs, and I feel a powerful darkness approaching."
"Does this have anything to do with Lucifer?" asked Nathaniel.
"I'm almost sure of it,"
replied God in a defeated voice.
"I have predicted that Lucifer is going to attempt to seize the mortal world. We cannot allow this to happen."
"What are we going to do about it? What if he isn't planning something?" Nathaniel inquired.
"If Lucifer isn't on the move,"
said God,
"then we have nothing to worry about. However, we need to be sure. That's where you come in, my son."
Nathaniel blinked curiously, and then he furrowed his brow. His father went on.
"I'm sending you down to Earth to watch out for anything that may suggest Lucifer is working."
"But where on earth are you sending me? I can't watch over the whole planet."
"Relax. There is a city I have in mind."
God unrolled a map of the United States of America and pointed to California.
"The signs have led me to San Francisco,"
he explained.
"You will be enrolled in a school there. I've already had my secretaries set up your living quarters. You'll stay down there for as long as it takes to conclude what may or may not be happening."
"Father, are you sure I'm the right person for this?" Nathaniel asked slowly.
"Positive,"
said God with a smile.
"I believe you're ready to handle such an important task. I have complete faith in you."
Nathaniel flushed slightly, bowing his head. He couldn't help but disagree with his father, but he knew better than to argue.
"Now, go pack whatever you need. You'll be leaving tomorrow."
"Yes, Father," Nathaniel murmured, and he strode out of the office. The bell rang, signaling to students that class had begun. Nathaniel entered his first period, math. He was nervous, but he dared not show it. He located the teacher, who was standing next to the board and talking to a taller boy with black hair. Nathaniel couldn't see his face, but he scanned his clothing, a dark gray jacket, tight black jeans, and knee-high black boots. This boy was completely contrasted by Nathaniel's light blue button-up shirt, blue jeans, and light gray sneakers. As Nathaniel approached the teacher, the black-haired boy turned to look at him. Their eyes met, and Nathaniel saw that this boy had pallid skin and crimson eyes, which were surrounded by heavy black and red eyeliner. His shoulder-length black hair had a few streaks of red in it, and he had piercings, 2 in his left eyebrow and 1 stud on his lower lip. Looking down, Nathaniel saw that, under the jacket, the boy was wearing a low-cut black shirt and a choker with a pentagram hanging from it. He looked at the boy's right hand and saw that the word fuck was tattooed on his middle finger, along with painted black nails. He met the boy's eyes again. His stare was so cold, Nathaniel could tell immediately that this boy was bad news. "Oh, you must be the other new student," said the teacher suddenly. She had a strong Irish accent. Nathaniel jumped and looked at her. He almost forgot the reason he had walked up to her in the first place.
Yes, he said, tearing his gaze away from the boy's pale face. My name's Nathaniel.
"Nice to meet you, hon," she said with a sweet smile. "I am Mrs. O'Reilly. Why don't you boys stand in front of the class so I can introduce you?"
The black-haired boy walked slowly past Nathaniel, still giving him that stone-cold stare. They stood side by side in front of the whiteboard.
"Class, we have 2 new students joining us. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, boys."
Nathaniel looked to the boy, not sure if he should go first. After receiving another sharp look, he decided to go ahead. My name is Nathaniel, he began. I just moved here from Alpine. My father wanted to live somewhere with more life in it, I guess. He couldn't help but notice how many girls were staring at him as if they've never seen anything like him before. I don't know what else to say.
Are you single?
Piped up one of the girls, and there was a sudden burst of giggles from all the other girls in the room. Mrs. O'Reilly frowned.
"Lainey, that was highly inappropriate,"
she said with a tone of annoyance. Then she nodded at the other boy, inviting him to introduce himself as well. He nodded, but didn't smile.
I'm Damien,
he said. He had a smooth, low voice with a slight English accent, but it was cold and sent shivers up Nathaniel's spine. Apparently he wasn't the only one, for the girls seemed to shiver as well, but he was sure it was for a different reason. They were looking at Damien the same way they had looked at him.
I'm originally from Greater Manchester, England, though I moved here from Arizona. It's hot there. Very hot.
The corner of his lips curled into a small grin, and the class went so silent it was almost as though they had stopped breathing.
"Well," said Mrs. O'Reilly after a moment, "if that's all, there's 2 empty seats in the back of the room. Go ahead and sit down, and then we'll start."
Nathaniel followed Damien to the back of the room. There was an empty seat that Damien took, and Nathaniel took the only other empty one right behind him. He felt nervous about sitting so close to a boy who seemed to have formed a loathing for him the second their eyes met. As the class went on, Nathaniel took notes, writing in small, neat letters. He already knew all the things Mrs. O'Reilly was teaching, but he didn't want to make it seem like he wasn't trying. He was a firm believer in respect. He looked ahead of him, seeing Damien was also feverishly taking notes. He wrote in all capital letters, but they were also small like Nathaniel's. It seemed like Damien craved respect as well, despite his appearance. The class ended after being assigned a small amount of homework. He noticed Damien walking in front of him. He held himself confidently, straight-backed, chin up, and taking wide strides. To Nathaniel's discomfort, he saw that Damien shared his next class. They introduced themselves the same way, and he could tell that Damien was not happy about the arrangement. Why did he hate him so much? They hadn't even spoken to each other. Nathaniel discovered that he shared every single period with him, each one becoming more unpleasant. They even sat in close proximity to each other in a majority of the classes. Nathaniel couldn't help staring at the pentagram on Damien's choker. They couldn't have been more opposite, for Nathaniel supported a silver cross hanging from a chain around his neck. After school was finally over, Nathaniel took out his cell phone. This was a specialized phone that was able to reach his father. He dialed the number and waited for an answer. "Hello," said a female voice. "Hi, it's Nathaniel. Is my father available?" "1 second, sir." Nathaniel waited until his father picked up the phone.
Any news, son?
He said immediately. Well, this may just be paranoia, he said slowly, but I think one of my classmates is a demon. God was silent for a moment.
And how do you support your theory?
He asked. Again, I could be completely wrong. He's dressed in all black, has black and red hair, crimson eyes, and a choker with a pentagram on it. His father went quiet again.
Nathaniel, I'm disappointed in you,
he said, and he truly sounded it.
I thought I taught you better. You're making harsh judgments. He may just like the fashion. As for the pentagram, maybe he's satanic. That's not our concern. You know it's not our place to judge others by their religion.
I know, said Nathaniel frantically. But, Father, you didn't see how he looked at me. It was like... He paused, then went on sheepishly. Hate at first sight.
Well, I'm not going to support your theory unless you have a more liable reason to be suspicious,
said God firmly.
Just keep an eye on him. Again, he's probably just an average human.
Well, that won't be hard, seeing as he's in each of my classes.
That's convenient.
Nathaniel laughed, and they said their goodbyes. He turned around to walk home and ran right into Damien. He shoved him suddenly, looking appalled.
Don't touch me!
It was the first time he'd actually spoken directly to Nathaniel. Sorry, he replied softly. I didn't see where I was going. Damien glared at him, and then made to push past him, but Nathaniel stopped him. Wait.
What?
Damien snapped. Listen, I don't know why you hate me so much, he said bravely. We just met. We're both new, and neither of us have made any friends yet.
So,
I think it would be good to become friends. Newbies gotta stick together, right? Damien growled.
You're the last person I want to befriend,
he shouted. Why?
'Cause you're a goody-goody.
They were silent for a moment, Damien still glaring with those shining red eyes. Nathaniel's lips parted slightly. A goody-goody? He repeated.
Yes,
replied Damien.
I can just tell by the look of you. You're that guy who chooses to do the right thing instead of the easy thing. You want to get into people's good books, including teachers. You abide by the most meaningless laws and rules, and you never take risks. You are a saint incarnate!
Nathaniel flushed, his lips still parted. After a moment, he spoke. Is that really a bad thing?
It's annoying,
said Damien calmly. But I've seen you take notes in class, Nathaniel argued.
I want to pass the class,
Damien replied quietly, looking away.
But I eventually find loopholes. I'm able to figure out what I can afford to skive off. I always get my way, you see. I'll do anything to get my way.
He seemed to say this last part to himself. He met Nathaniel's eyes again.
Do yourself a favor. Don't ever talk to me again.
With that, he turned and walked away from the campus. Nathaniel was frozen on the spot. Never had he met a person like Damien. He's seen rebels before. It's natural in humans. However, there was something about Damien that just wasn't right. Nathaniel arrived home about half an hour later. He had been stationed in a very nice and fairly large house, equipped with all necessities: food, bathrooms, bookcases, television, furniture, electricity, as well as things a wealthy person may have. He went up to his bedroom and flopped backwards onto the bed. He closed his eyes and let out a long, deep sigh. Maybe he was just being paranoid. Maybe Damien was just a mean, rebellious teenager. Nathaniel realized that he was judging him just as quickly as Damien had judged him. The problem was, Damien had been right about him. He was a do-gooder. He did abide all the rules, and he always had the common sense to not do something reckless. Well, Nathaniel thought to himself, I am an angel after all. Morality and virtue are all I know. He sat up and looked around the room. It was clean, bearing white-painted walls, off-white carpet, and a nice big window with white curtains. He laughed softly. Well, if Damien hates me for being a good person, he'd definitely hate this house, he said to himself. He looked behind him and saw a cross on the wall above his pillow. But what if I'm right? Meanwhile, Damien was sitting on the couch, crunching a rolled-up piece of paper in his hand. He glared at it, gritting his teeth, imagining it was Nathaniel's head. He had spoken to his father on the phone almost as soon as he had entered his house, and he told him about Nathaniel. Damien's father thought it was probably a good idea to study Nathaniel's behavior in case he posed as a problem. His father even went as far as to suggest forming a friendship. Damien had hung up in fury.
Form a friendship?
He growled, crunching the paper harder.
Study him? I don't even want to be here! What's he playing at?
Damien stared at the paper, which was so compacted it seemed like it couldn't be uncrumpled. He suddenly growled with rage and chucked the paper into the fireplace, where there was a bright flickering fire, crackling innocently. He watched the paper burn, and once it had turned to ashes, he put out the fire and went to his bedroom.